Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to an episode of Red Light Sports Ramble, joined by my co-host, Evan Witallison. Evan, this is a great day. This is our first ever live episode on Blog Talk Radio, and so I know you and I are both excited about bringing the Red Light Sports Ramble to Blog Talk Radio. It's a great step for our show. Today's show, we're going to talk about those NFL coaches that are on the hot seat. I know you had put out a Twitter poll. I had actually put it out on our Facebook page also. We got a little reaction from that. But before we get into today's topic, I want you to let the listeners know about the breaking news coming out of Wisconsin. And for those new listeners, I am living in Pittsburgh. I am originally from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Evan lives near Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He does an intern for a radio station, which you'll talk about. And there's 3 breaking stories coming out of Wisconsin today before tomorrow's game. So, Evan, I'm going to turn it over to you before we get into today's topic about the NFL coaches. Let me know what's going on in Wisconsin, bud. I read a little bit on the internet today, but I'd like to hear it right from Wisconsin.
Yeah, very hectic morning. I was interning with the Chuck and Wicked show on Sports Radio 1250 WSSP, and that's probably a station that's getting pretty well known nationally right now because yesterday, late afternoon, Josh Sitton, the left guard for the Packers, was on the Bake Show, and he was asked a question about the Detroit Lions taking a cheap shot at Aaron Rodgers if Rodgers were to play, and he answered it by saying that they would, saying they're scumbags, dirtbags, they're cheap shot artists, and he called their coach, I'm not going to say the word, but it's part of the male anatomy, and I'll just leave it at that. So that happened last night. This morning at about 9 o'clock, Lambeau time, I guess I would say. This is now baseball news. Milwaukee Brewers outfielder Ryan Braun spoke to the media for the first time since he got his suspension this past season for PED use. Actually took questions which shocked a lot of people, and if anyone is interested in listening to the press conference, go to sportsradio1250.com. It is posted on that website, the full verse of the audio, or just check out my Twitter page, EW1250 intern. I retweeted the host of the morning show who had tweeted it out too. And then also this morning, and just hit the airways, Mike McCarthy has announced that Matt Flynn will be the starting quarterback tomorrow when the Packers take on the Lions. So very eventful day, past 24 hours here in Wisconsin.
Sounds like it. Not only some Packer news, but a little bit of Brewer news, and I'm definitely going to log in and listen to the Braun conversation. I didn't get a chance to yet. I was more interested in the Josh Sitton episode. I'll tell you what, Evan, you and I were talking pre-chat about this article and about his comments, and you and I are kind of in agreement that, if the Lions need more motivation, then are they really a playoff caliber team, to use the comments? But I guess where I'm coming from with the whole thing is I think he could have used a little bit different language. I don't have a problem with him stating his opinion and saying, hey, the defense takes cheap shots and so on, and it starts with the coach. I'm actually okay with that. I mean, I've been a player. I've been a coach. I've been in these situations, of course, not at this level. But I have been at a level where I've been interviewed, and, sometimes your emotions take over, and I think that's what took over now. I just wish he would have used a little bit different language, because people on the outside looking in aren't going to realize that, Sitton's having a pretty good year. He's a pretty good player for the Packers, and they're going to see this article, and they're just going to see this article and consider him, a guy with no character, a guy that doesn't care, whatever it is. I guess that's where my frustration comes in from him doing this. I just wish he would have used a little bit different language. I don't care that he's outspoken, because I agree with you. If they need more motivation other than just the game itself, and then I think the Lions are barking up the wrong tree. What's your quick thought on that?
I personally don't have an issue with what he said. Members of the media, Chuck Freeman on the show this morning was saying that members of the media and us as fans get mad when the players and the coaches give the cliche answers all the time. You know, why not just say what you mean and mean what you say kind of thing. And that's exactly what Sitton did, is he said what he meant and he means what he says. And I have no problem with it. And if the Lions need it for extra motivation, then they have other problems they have to worry about.
I agree. I mean, like I said, the comments, and it'll be a great debate. Maybe it'll take some of the pressure off all the other things the Packers are going through, because you and I previewed this game yesterday, and we did post it on our YouTube channel. It is on our home, which is Your Daily Cowboys Football Fix. We posted our preview show, and there's a lot of other things that we need to worry about other than what Josh Sitton said yesterday. We've got other things to worry about when it comes to kickoff. But we're going to get away from that. And you posted a great poll question yesterday. And I think it's about that time of the year, Evan, where we do start looking at this. And that's what coaches are on the hot seat. And I know you put the poll out for Mike Shanahan, for Mike Smith, and for Gary Kubiak. Now, we got a little input. Mark joined the show yesterday when we were doing our test. And he had mentioned he thought Kubiak was the biggest one on the hot seat. We had a Twitter response today when I retweeted your post for Mike Shanahan, because he's lost the locker room. But let's kind of go through all three of these, and I've actually added a couple to the list that I thought can also be like honorable mentions. But I think there's a number of coaches when I looked at it that are really in danger of losing their job. But when we do look at it, let's start and go through the three that you had posted: Mike Shanahan, Mike Smith, and Gary Kubiak. Three coaches that have brought their team to the playoffs last year. And if we look at it too, we can add Leslie Frazier to the mix because he had his team in the playoffs.
Yep.
You got Tom Coughlin, had his team in the playoffs. Also,
add Jim Schwartz to the mix too.
And I think Jim.
I'll touch on that, and I'll touch on that in a little bit.
Yeah, and
add Jim Schwartz to the mix too.
But let's just use the three from the poll question, and we look at Shanahan, Smith, and Kubiak. Personally, I think Kubiak is in the biggest danger of those three. I had mentioned to you, and since you and I talk every day, you kind of know where I am with this. I'm not a big person that agrees with firing the coach halfway through the season or even with a couple games to go. I understand why. They want to get in, evaluate players, so on and so forth. But I really, Evan, don't know how Kubiak is still in Houston today. I mean, they have very much not even touched close to an expectation. Their record right now is 2-9. They got the same record as the Jaguars. Kubiak is in his 8th year.
They just lost too.
I mean, he's in his 8th year, and the farthest they've ever gotten is the divisional game. And he's got a ton of talent on that defense. And offensively, there's a bunch of woes there. And if memory serves me right, isn't it Kubiak that is supposed to be an offensive man? So where are
that was his MO.
Where are the problems coming? And I don't even know where to start in Houston. I mean, it's just in such disarray down there that I think of all the coaches we're going to talk about today, I don't see how Kubiak can even come back. I don't know. I don't know what your thought is on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. You look at Gary Kubiak. Last year they made the playoffs. Before that they made the playoffs. They're supposed to be Super Bowl contenders this year. This is supposed to be their year to make a run at the Super Bowl. Super Bowl favorites. And like you said, they have a great defense, led by J.J. Watt. And they have Andre Johnson, probably one of the better receivers the NFL seen in the last 15 years. They have they had a very good power running game with Arian Foster, who's now on the IR, and Ben Tate. And they had a pretty, in my opinion, a pretty good offensive line coming into the season. And it's like it's all falling apart. The offensive line's not playing well. The quarterback position has been in flux all season. Matt Schwab wasn't what they thought he would be. And then Casey Keenum, he's starting to struggle a little bit. He's coming back down to earth as teams are starting to learn how to stop him. And if you look at Kubiak, he's supposed to be an offensive guy. He's supposed to be a quarterback guy. He used to be a quarterback in the league. and you would think his quarterback should be playing better. So I don't know how he got in the mess that he's in, but I just think it's time for the Texans at the end of the year to move in a new direction. They're very close to being a Super Bowl contender. Very close with the talent they have on that roster, and it's kind of sad that Andre Johnson's in the twilight of his career going through this in Houston.
Well, I agree with you. The talent level on that team is, on paper, you match them up on paper with any other team, and it looks like they should, be 9-2 like the Broncos and the Chiefs. With the talent that they have on that team, and maybe the season would have been a little bit different had they not lost a couple of those early games, on the last second field goal. But hey, a loss is a loss. Doesn't matter how it happens. And there was also the fiasco with Reed.
Never apologize for a win and never make excuses for a loss.
Exactly. And there was that incident, halfway through the season, just a couple weeks ago with Ed Reed. And so with those things happening, I don't see how he keeps his job. Let's move on to Mike. Let's move on to Mike Smith in Atlanta, another team that clearly has not even touched expectations. And the funny thing is here, Evan, the coach we just talked about, Gary Kubiak, that was supposed to be my AFC Super Bowl team, Houston. And the coach we're going to talk about now, Mike Smith, I had said in a preseason ramble that this was the year that Matt Ryan got over the hump, brought his team through the playoffs, and got to the Super Bowl. So both of my Super Bowl teams are now sitting with a record of 2-9. So that makes me feel not very good that I do not know how to predict anything. But Mike Smith...
Well, you're not the only one that's predicted those two to get there, so don't feel too bad.
Yeah, well, we got to go back.
The so-called experts did too.
And of course, since we're new to Blog Talk Radio and we are live, we probably have some new listeners. And for those that will continue to listen in, I will always tell Evan I'm the idiot with an opinion, and Evan is the man with facts. So it just goes to prove right there, Evan, I'm just an idiot with an opinion. But my biggest thing with Mike Smith, it isn't so much that they're 2-9. It even goes back to before the season started. He couldn't win in the playoffs. I mean, last year was his first win in the playoffs. Before that he was 0-3, and now he's 1-4 in the playoffs. So it was always like, oh, okay, the Atlanta Falcons cruise through the regular season, but they can't win the big game. And now this year they just can't win games. So I don't know what's going on there. But even before the season, I thought if they didn't make a good playoff run that they might think about getting a different coach with the talent they have there also, because they couldn't win in the playoffs. What's your take on Mike Smith?
Well, there are two moves that Atlanta made in the offseason that, in my opinion, were not very smart, and they never replaced, and that was letting John Abraham go was number one. They let him go without having another pass rusher on that roster. You get rid of your best pass rusher and then you have nothing. That's one of Atlanta's biggest weaknesses on defense right now. They have no one that can get after the quarterback. And then offensively, and he's a guy that most Packer fans this past offseason were clamoring for. We have to have him. We have to have him. I think it's a mistake signing Steven Jackson. He got overworked in St. Louis, and he doesn't have much left in the tank. And if you look at how injury-prone he has been this season, it's showing. He got overworked in St. Louis. He carried the ball a lot, and he doesn't have much left now in Atlanta. Not saying that Turner did, but they, let Turner go, try to upgrade the position with Jackson, and it's not working. And then you lose, with that Roddy White that's out for the year, or Julio Jones. One of those two is out for the year, and the other one's been battling injury problems all year. And it's just a recipe for disaster. And I think, I like Mike Smith personally. I think he's a very good defensive mind, but some people are meant to be defensive coordinators, and some people are meant to be head coaches, And I don't know if he's one that's meant to be a head coach. So it's just going to be interesting to see what Arthur Blank does in the offseason in regards to Mike Smith, but high expectations, and they're not living up to it.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. And then, the last coach you put on the poll is Mike Shanahan. My biggest thing with him is I think he forced RG3 into the season maybe a little bit too quickly. His decision-making at this point, I don't even know. And I've had a knee injury, and I came back quickly, too, just to prove I could. But I'll tell you what, Evan, it took me 2 full years to regain everything back and have the stability and the confidence in that knee. And, I'm not blaming everything on RG3. That defense was crap the first half of the season. But, like our Twitter follower had sent out, I think Shanahan's lost the locker room. I don't think those players are buying into what he's selling anymore. And I think it's time for a change in Washington. And we know Schneider will probably make that move. He wants to win, and he's going to try to buy a winner. That's what he does all the time. But at 3-8 and out of the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a move made in Washington before the end of the season. I don't see how Shanahan's going to keep his job after the success they had last year. And moving forward, I think Schneider's going to make that move, and it'll be interesting to see who he gets to come in and coach that team. What do you think about Shanahan?
Yeah, I don't know about Washington situation. That's just been one big cluster, this season. I think most listeners are going to know what I'm insinuating there. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. And I don't get why, and yeah, I guess you could argue that maybe Robert Griffin wasn't quite ready to be playing at the beginning of the season, but they didn't use him at all in the preseason to see if he would be ready, and that was a huge mistake right there that Shanahan made. And he didn't do anything to address the defense. He takes a lot of responsibility in the personnel, and that defense is bad. Corners are bad. Linebackers are not very good. They rushed quarterback well, but they don't really do anything else really well at all. Remember what James Starks did to that defense back in week 2. I just don't know what happened with Shanahan. He's supposed to be an offensive innovator, and he hasn't been much of one lately. And one thing to think about in regards to Mike Shanahan, he's always, for whatever reason, has butted heads with his quarterbacks. Him and John Elway ended up working really well together, but him and John Elway took a little while to warm up to one another. So I don't know if it's, Shanahan adjusting to the quarterback or the quarterback finally adjusting to Shanahan, but I think it's going to have to be Shanahan adjusting to Griffith, and I don't see RG3 adjusting to, Shanahan. If anything, I think they're going to have to look for a new coach going into next season. Yeah,
I think we agree there. So, those were the 3 that we put out in the Twitter poll. We can only get 140 characters on Twitter, but I had thought about 4 other coaches that I think might be in trouble, and then I'm going to get your list of other coaches. I know you had put another list together also. But here's the list that I put together, Evan. On the top of that list of these 4, and they're in no order. I went through and I just wrote down the 4. But I have Leslie Frazier in Minnesota. I have Mike Munchak in I have Mike Munchak. I know they're the 6th seed right now, but I'll tell you why as soon as I get through my list. Then I do have Tom Coughlin on the list, because when I look at he's at his worst season ever was 6-10. That was his first season in New York 9 years ago. And since then, he's won 2 Super Bowls, and they're so used to winning that at 4-7 and pretty much out of the playoff race, it might be time. Maybe the Coughlin way is not working in New York anymore. I have no idea. And then I did put Schiano on the list. I know they've won 3 in a row, but I don't know, with all the fiasco they had in the beginning of the year, if that's still sticking in ownership's mind. And, if they win out, maybe. But if they stumble a little bit, I know right now at 3-8, doesn't look like much hope. But, if they finish maybe 7-9, 8-8, maybe he'll keep his job. But, with all of the fiasco that went on early in the year, I think he's on the hot seat too. I think he's shown a lot in the last 3 games, but I think a lot of that's going to come down to the players. And we know, Evan, that in the NFL today, the player's voice, actually the ownership listens a lot. And if the players don't want the coach and they're not going to play for the coach, the owner has to make a move, whether it's right or wrong. I'm not saying it's fair, and I'm not saying that's the right thing, but the way society is and the way that it is with these players, if you get the majority of your players going to ownership saying, we don't want this guy, well, what is the owner going to do? Even if he likes the guy, ultimately every owner wants a chance to win a Super Bowl, and if the players don't want to play for the coach, you got to make a move. And so that's why I put him on the list. And going back to my Munchak pick, and I want to give you some time as we have about 9 minutes left, I just think that in his third season here, he's been right around 500, and they're 5-6 again this year. And I think the biggest problem is they just haven't been able to find a quarterback. They don't have a franchise guy. You and I talked about that. But I just watched the way the team plays, and they're playing tough, and that's the Munchak mentality. But I just don't see that team progressing and making steps forward in his 3 years. At 5-6 to have a chance and be the 6th seed in the playoffs, is it really improvement, or is it just because the other teams are falling back to the pack? And in my mind, they're basically that 6th seed because those other teams are falling back to the pack, not that the Titans have gotten better. And so that's why I put him on my list. But who else do you have on your list, bud?
Well, I have Leslie Frazier on the list. They're 2-8-1, and they were a playoff team last year. Had very high expectations coming into the year. They signed Greg Jennings. Adrian Peterson is another year back from his ACL injury, and he was outstanding last year. In his first year back from it, he kind of ruined ACL injuries for everybody with how quickly he came back. So now everyone is expecting everyone to come back like that, really. But I think I put him on my list, but I think he's safe for the fact that I think the owner really likes him, and I think the owner is going to give him an opportunity to make that next step. That's the same with Tennessee's coach. The family that owns the Titans. I don't know how that ownership's going to shake out now with Bud Adams, passing away, but the ownership likes him. I think they're going to give him another chance in Tennessee. And then the other guy I had on my list is Jim Schwartz, and thought really long and hard about putting him on my list. But if you look at it and you think about it, if the Lions end up missing the playoffs this year, they're going to miss the playoffs when in their division, Aaron Rodgers missed significant time, the best quarterback in the league. Jay Cutler missed significant time, and he's, I would say, a mid-tier quarterback in the league. He's not one of the top guys, but he's good. And then the Vikings, being the Vikings, they missed the playoffs where the three teams in the division did not have a quarterback. And if they end up missing the playoffs, that might be the straw that breaks the camel's back, because the Lions are in prime position to make a run for the playoffs and that division win. So I think if they miss the division, I think he might be out.
Those are some good points. And you know what? I would agree with you. You would think the way that this division is shaking out, and you and I mentioned it earlier in the week, turning into the NFC East. Nobody wants to claim this division. And the Lions are the team of the four teams that you would think would be riding high with all the injuries and what's going on in Minnesota with that quarterback controversy and that quarterback carousel, that the Lions had a great opportunity. And I'm not saying that they're not going to win the division. They very well could. But you wouldn't think that they'd be in a dogfight right now. If you would have told me in the beginning of the season that Aaron Rodgers is going to miss significant time, like you said, that Jay Cutler's going to go down, and that the Vikings are going to start a number of quarterbacks, but the Lions are going to continue to start Stafford, Johnson, and added Reggie Bush, who would you pick to win that division running away? Detroit easily. And so I'm on board with you there. I actually said in the beginning of the season, I did a similar ramble before I had brought you aboard to co-host with me about those coaches that really needed to make a statement this year. And on that list, I had Jim Schwartz. I put on that list that it is playoffs or bust for him. And if he doesn't make the playoffs, I would agree that I think he has done. I didn't put him on my list just because of the way they're playing right now. And, this really hurts me to say, but, you and I both picked the Lions to win tomorrow. And I think if they win, I think they're going to take control of the division, and I think they're going to win the division. Now, I know Mark had tweeted out to me today, and he's going against our picks. I don't know if you had a chance to see that.
No, I haven't had a chance to yet.
Yeah, Mark said he's picking the Packers, and he's picking them big. I believe it was 38-31 in a shootout. So hopefully he's right and we're wrong. I really want to be wrong this week. But with that said, I can't disagree with you about Jim Schwartz if the Lions don't make the playoffs. I think he's on his way out, especially with a lot of the.
Can I pose one last hypothetical question, quick?
Yeah, we got 4 minutes left, but we got plenty of time.
That we're talking about coaches on the hot seat. Philbin in Miami is said to be on the hot seat right now with the huge mess that's going on in Miami. And I guess just something for listeners to think about and for you to think about. You don't have to give me the answer right now. If Philbin gets let go in Miami, would you welcome him back as an assistant in Green Bay?
Yeah, that's a good question.
We could.
That's a good question. I think we'll have to put that one on the back of my brain because I know you and I were going to talk about, coaching moves the Packers need to make on the staff after the season. Playoffs or no playoffs, it'll definitely be a ramble of ours on what are the Packers going to do with assistants. And I don't even have an answer off my cuff. You caught me off guard on that one, bud. It's a good question to think about. I never thought about it. But, I liked him when he was here. I don't know how much he really, had as an impact. I mean, I'd have to sit back and really spend some time thinking about it, throw me on the hot seat like that. But I know he helped out the offense, and he was good at developing some things. I know McCarthy has a lot to say in that offense. But, I'll tell you what, since he left, our red zone offenses went to poo. So maybe he had a lot. Maybe
and one thing that he did.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say one thing that he did really well in was helping with the mid-game adjustments, and that's something we've been struggling into since he left.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some struggles since he left offensively. We cannot argue against that. So definitely something to think about. But off my cuff, I'd say I wouldn't mind having him back. I think he's a good coach. How would he fit? I don't know. But I know definitely we got to improve our red zone offense because that sucks right now. But with that said, Bud, we got about 2 minutes. Any last words for our listeners? I mean, I definitely want to thank any new listeners we had today on live radio, which is awesome. I love it. Thought we had a pretty good ramble going on today. But any last thoughts, Bud, before we wrap it up?
Just one quick one. Sam Shields and Johnny Jolly are probable for the game on tomorrow, so they should be playing. And just want to say thank you to our loyal listeners, and thank you to Cass at your daily CowboyFootballFix.com for their support. And if you want to check out the live press conference, go to SportsRadio1250.com. And it's posted right there on the website. I know because I'm the one that posted it. So, SportsRadio1250.com. You can get the Sitton interview, too, if you go to the podcast, too.
That's awesome. There's your internship.
Put a podcast on there.
There's your internship responsibilities coming into play, which is awesome, Bud. But yeah, I'll tell you what. I'm going to say I am proud of us. Normally, when we have a time,
60 seconds.
Normally, when we have a time limit, we go way over it. But now with this live radio, we're kind of forced to go into a time. And I'll tell you what, Bud, we did it. We actually did a show within the allotted time that we said we were going to do it. So, hey, congratulations, Bud. We did it.
And with that said...
and with that said, I'm going to let the listeners go. We'll see you at the next red light. Again, thanks to all our loyal listeners. Thanks to your daily CowboysFootballFix.com, home of, contributing to the Red Light Sports Ramble. We'll talk to you all at a later date. Enjoy your Thanksgiving and be safe wherever you are. Have a happy holiday. We'll talk to you soon.